Welcome to hour number 2, live right here on College Football Today. It's the second Saturday of October. It's a Saturday we've all been looking forward to for quite some time. He is OK Dubs. That is Kevin Walsh. He is the mastermind of the college football pigskin. That is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens, and we start hour 2 with my top 10. But before the top 10, it's the wait list. Like applying to your favorite college, maybe, just maybe, you're getting in. All right, again, a reminder for everybody out there, no particular order of these 5 teams, just on the outside looking in. And it doesn't have to be critiques. There can be praise. There can be a, hey, Ben, good job. I like where you put that team. Here is the 5 teams on the wait list. LSU, Iowa State, Kansas State, the Big 12 back having some representation. Ole Miss remains on the outside. Let's see that smile.
Yeah.
And Boise State does check into the wait list for the first time this season. A legitimate, not just front runner to win the Mountain West or earn what is perceived to be the group of 5 spot in the college football playoff. They could be having an opening round bye if the season stays the way it does with the Heisman Trophy favorite in Ashton Genty. We start with you. A quizzical look on your face. Go ahead.
Yeah, so as everyone now doesn't have to be slander.
Right.
But I truly did come into this spoiler-free, so I have a question.
Please.
Because I might have a problem.
Okay.
Is Texas A&M in the top 10?
No.
How in the world are they not on the wait list?
Texas A&M, are they? I don't know if they're in the top 10 or not. No, they're not. They're not. They're on the outside looking in at this moment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wrong. That's way wrong. Texas A&M belongs to be inside the top 10.
Yeah.
They beat up on Missouri, who spent this entire season inside the waiting list at minimum. The loss came to Notre Dame in week 1, who I imagine is inside this top 10, where I'm going to flip this screen upside down.
Right.
And they have a win over Florida, who I know is not great, but all of a sudden there's Frisky against Tennessee today here. I think both SEC teams inside this wait list should be underneath A&M. You're not alone, though. The AP poll agrees. I think Texas A&M is being given no respect in the marketplace.
No, you're right about that. And again, 5-1 overall. He's done a fantastic job. That was a gutty win, and their only losses to Notre Dame. I'll just say this. How far did Tennessee fall out of the list?
Oh, they're in the top 10. Oh, they're in that top 10.
They're down a little bit.
Yeah.
They're in the top 10.
Right,
I would have the balls inside my top 10.
How would they not be?
I'm just well, I don't know.
They're
But anyway, the reason that A&M would be on the outside, maybe 16 or 17, again, compared to the SEC teams that we have in this resume, again, Missouri's not here, by the way. Missouri's way out. When you talk about projection, and I do use the CFP odds to reach the playoff, to win a national championship, as we do things from the odds perspective, these 2 prices on LSU and Ole Miss still check in ahead of A&M.
I think A&M moved in front of LSU unless
it was a 65 to 1 price. Anyway,
but for me, or you're talking about to win a national title?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, A&M's around plus 150 though, give or take, to make the playoff. A&M's number to make the playoff is very on the board. Their remaining games against ranked opponents are both in their building, which is super beneficial. One of them is LSU, another late season against Texas. Here's where I'll not cover for you, but I will say this. The winner of today's game probably jumps right back in front of it, and the loser, I imagine, will be wiped off this list.
Yes.
Thank you.
So let me get back to Tennessee, though, because you drop Ole Miss back from basically 9 to what?
100%.
Ole Miss was on the wait list last week. I did not move them into the top 10.
You love that Oklahoma team.
And I was on Ole Miss last week. I laid the 9.5.
beat OU on the road by 10. You love that Oklahoma team.
I do like it, yeah.
2 ranked wins this year for Tennessee.
After their victory over Auburn. But again, they lose to a team that lost to Oklahoma State. They were a 3.5-point favorite in regards to that.
Yeah, but you got the cover in that game. You like that Razorback.
Well, you know the Hogs are a good underdog team.
They are a good
underdog
team. But I mean,
you want the Vols out of the top 10?
Yeah,
no, you don't.
No way.
Well, I don't think you do.
No way. I need that Lisi top 10. That Aldo's got Texas Tech too high.
Texas Tech should
impressive
be in the top
last
15.
week against Arizona.
They should. BYU should be in this list.
So BYU was in consideration. I wanted to put a second Big 12 team in here. Iowa State looking for its first 6-0 start today in Morgantown since 1938. One of 12 remaining undefeated teams and a perfect 4-0 against spread against FBS opponents.
Right.
I do believe in this K-State team ahead of a huge game in Boulder tonight. It's why I wanted to allude to Kansas State here.
Okay. Now, this was my top. Kansas State lost, got boat raced by BYU.
Fluky game.
For sure.
But it doesn't matter.
Okay.
They're undefeated.
Late night in Provo, as you
They're
know.
undefeated.
Yeah, I'll say, listen, again, like this is
like
Here we go.
betting Dev's top 10. Here's the thing. With the wait list, you can be a little more fast and loose. A little more projections. I think K-State's better.
Like,
hold on, let me say this.
The projection.
Like I'm in Willy Wonka
Let
here.
me say, can I
now.
say this? If K-State loses,
Then they're out.
forget that. Colorado.
And he's actually not wrong.
Only
in that.
losses at Nebraska,
all right,
5-1 start.
Wait a second.
3-0 in the Big 12.
And so is Texas Tech, and so is
but then,
BYU.
Texas Tech
Nowhere
lost
near.
and covered against anybody.
Because it's Deion. Just admit, I love Deion as well, and they're doing it with
Because
flair.
it's Deion.
See-
you laid 14.5 with UCF. Got knocked around so bad.
What
You
does
must
that
have
have to
forgot.
do- No,
you
no.
must have forgot because it's
BYU
Deion.
is
What are you,
under-
nuts? Shooter Sanders, the best
BYU
quarterback in college football.
but
What are you
Avery
talking about?
Johnson-
Who
BYU
plays
is
for
losing
Texas
today. Don't
Tech?
worry about it.
Brennan Morton? Are you
come on.
crazy?
5-1.
Texas Tech hasn't lost
5-1.
so bad on their resume.
Doesn't
I don't
matter.
even remember who it was
John
to.
Mateer.
Washington
John
State.
Mateer.
Ugh.
Yeah.
John
Oh,
Mateer.
Minshew Light.
John
Cut it out with this
Mateer.
Texas
Tarleton
John
State
Mateer.
almost won in
Cut it out
overtime.
with this Texas
You got
Tech.
2 undefeated teams not on the list, but K-State's there because you picked them in the Big 12.
Yes, because I still use projection.
Oh, that's right. It's his top 10.
It
forgot.
is.
I forgot.
And Kev's
It
a little bit
is.
too.
All
Thanks,
right.
buddy.
I'm going to bring my top 10.
Oh, why don't you-
LSU number 1.
I'd love to see it.
Of course it is.
Daniels, go ahead.
Jaden Daniels number 2, LSU number 1.
Yeah.
Let's get to the actual top 10,
All
though. Ooh, we love when the wait list is a little bit heated. Clemson checks in at number 10, back inside the top 10. Notre Dame at 9. They remain. Here's your Volunteers team. They have fallen
come on.
to 8.
No, come on. cut
Miami
it
at
out.
7, and
No,
Alabama
what is the
checking
Miami
in at number 6.
What's the Miami number? I don't get it. I don't
What?
get it. Miami doesn't get. He's behind the team
you're
that
right.
lost to Vanderbilt.
It should be Miami at number 7, ACC Replay Review Center at number 8.
Oh, you know, again, they could have called it correct on the field, and plus they
The
correctly
targeting
overturned
call
it.
is my issue.
Plus, they correctly overturned it. So we're worried about a Vodtech game. All Cam Ward
Even
does
outside
is
of that,
Cam
nowhere
Ward has
close to
more
covering.
Heisman moments this year than Dayton Daniels had all of last season.
I'm not gonna argue
Alabama
that.
lost to
Oh.
Vanderbilt.
Is Penn State 2 on this list?
No. Penn State's in the top 5, though. But as you see, again,
7.
plus 650. Fifth best price to win the national championship,
Okay.
minus 500 to reach the college
Okay.
football playoff.
I
still believe Alabama will do that.
Miami, but here's the deal. Miami's favored to win a conference, which would get them a top 4 seed.
That's why they're
But
number 7.
Alabama's not one of the top 2 teams in their conference.
Listen, there was a lot of conversation on where to put the Canes after 2 narrow, and I mean very narrow wins
Very exciting.
against both
Very
Vodtech
exciting.
and Cal. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I would have Notre Dame and Clemson right now ahead of Tennessee. I put Tennessee 10 and then 8 and 9.
Yeah, no conversation between 9 and 10.
For me,
Are you okay with it?
I would have A&M in front of Clemson as well, but those teams are right there for me, and I still actually would have Tennessee in front of both those teams. I agree with you.
All right, 5 through 1 as we work our way up. We have Oregon at 5, Penn State at 4, Georgia 3, Ohio State
What's your
2,
problem?
Texas back in front. You just hate Penn State.
I hate Ohio State. I mean,
What are you
again,
talking
where's
about?
the marquee win for Ohio State?
What are you saying
isn't
right
one.
now?
But you know that. But where's the marquee win for Oregon?
I would still put Georgia over Ohio State. I would.
I
would.
A one-loss team in front
Yeah.
of an undefeated team?
Yeah, they
in
lost to
this scenario?
Alabama on the road. It's your top 10,
Right.
not the AP top 10. Strength of schedule matters. Ohio State
As
hasn't
do these
played
numbers.
anybody.
As do these numbers.
To
And
me,
that's a short
I'll
price
be
to win
honest
a
with you.
national
You wanna
championship.
know, I honestly think my complaint is that you should still keep them at 1. Again, Texas's big win has aged like milk, and Ohio State rolled Iowa. You were on the Hawkeyes again.
You were on it.
You got
They've
knocked
covered in
around.
both
You
Big
wiped
Ten
it from
games.
the algo. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, well, I
you
had a
liked
bad
them.
week. It
No,
happened.
it's not about that.
Listen.
My point is, you're saying they played nobody.
They haven't played
They laid
any.
18.
They played
They
at
laid
home.
18 and a half
They
and
don't
won
have
by
Where's
28.
the road game? Where's the true road game
Well,
for Ohio State? It's going to happen
But
tonight.
again, you're so upset because you'd have them at 3.
yeah,
We're going to come on a commercial, but
Lisi's
this
top
is not
10's
going to
coming.
stop. We'll see you in a few.
I'm not. we're at a point in time coming off of a wild Saturday of college football. People are consistently peeking over at this board.
He actually would not be my number one overall pick, nor would I bet him to be the number one overall pick. I think you got that next wave of NFL players, which is so enticing, which when you see Jaden Daniels come into the NFL and you go, I can get something like that with a guy with just as good an arm.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was Lincoln! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
I do a sliding DiVincenzo to the one. Obviously, Terrence Jennings Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant with that amount of money.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I think the Washington Commanders are one of the best bets to win it all, or at the very least win the NFC.
Their offensive line, I do want to say one thing. It's very average. The coaching is good. They're getting good coaching from Bobby Johnson, their line coach. Here from the Giants, but they've kind of overachieved. Let's call it like it is. Daniels has taken them up. Look, that division's not very good, and they could very well win it over the Eagles, and the Cowboys. They're not a Super Bowl team.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
After a chaotic opening weekend of October, how do some SEC teams respond on this second Saturday of this month? Tennessee, a huge stretch for the Vols. Last week, upset on the road in Fayetteville against Arkansas. The Volunteers laid nearly 2 touchdowns. Today, they return to Rocky Top, laying more than 2 scores against Florida. Of course, ahead of the third Saturday in October, next week in Knoxville, hosting Alabama. So let's start here with the Volunteers. They remained in the top 10, much to your chagrin. 16.5-point spread, though, Lisi, in favor of Tennessee against the Gators team that last week against UCF as a slight home dog in Gainesville looked pretty darn good, pulling off the slight upset. How do you break down the matchup between Tennessee and Florida?
Well, from the series perspective, Florida has won 7 of the last 8, won this matchup by 16 points last year in the Swamp. And again, we talk about experience and big matchups. You could give the edge to Graham Mertz, right? And Lagway in terms of that 1-2 combo against Nico. And that's the concern that I do have in regards to this matchup, is that Florida's playing a little bit with house money going on the road. We know Tennessee lost last week, and I think Arkansas is above average. Very good defense. They were holding opposing offenses to only 82 rushing yards per game. And again, you know, what are we going to get out of this Tennessee offense if they can't run it consistently and get to 250, 300? Ultimately, they don't blow teams out, and that's why I'll take the Gators, Kev, in regards to this matchup. You're giving me almost 2 touchdowns and a field goal in a road type of situation in a rivalry game. I'll take the points.
So last week when we broke down Clemson, Florida State, I made the point that I had seen the number, but, you know, I hadn't dove into the game yet, and seeing the number, the whole time was under the impression Clemson was home. Now, if I waited long enough, I would have been able to tell you, and I got the cover, but I got the worst of the number, and Clemson, you know, Florida State cover 16.5, I had the wrong number. Same situation here. I thought this game was at Florida. I cannot – the Gators beat UCF, and all of a sudden now they're getting respect. 2 weeks ago, Billy Napier was on plane watch, whether or not they were going to let him back on the plane.
Correct.
I mean, if you're willing to pay juice, and I'm not saying it's inexpensive, but you get a flat 14 on Tennessee at home against Florida. Again, a Vols team that was getting national title buzz here.
Right.
I get they lost at Arkansas. I do. I feel as if Tennessee now has completely proven that the defense is real, which now means the questions on Tennessee, on Josh Heupel, on Nicky Treats.
Yeah.
Dylan Sampson, can the offense produce in a bounce-back spot where they only scored 14? I can only look to Tennessee. Yet, I'm not laying it because I'm just going to look to bet some Nico alts. I'm not betting the 222.5 straight. I want nothing to do with that. Either he breaks out or this team will be a round one exit when we get to the playoff because, incredibly, he is going to become their main issue. He has not been of the level that was very expected, understandably so, of him this year, Ben. You can get him for 300-plus passing yards at plus 700. It is now, I don't want to say now or never, but now would be a pretty good time for him to break out.
And Florida's defense has struggled this year, but great. And I mean great by relative expectation. Last week against Central Florida, UCF, one of the best rushing offenses in the country. The Gators, who entered as the second worst rushing defense in the SEC, held the Knights to only 108 yards on the ground, 2.7 yards per carry. R.J. Harvey, his season low, that's UCF's lead back, only 75 yards. Kev, to your point, though, Nico Iamaleava has been struggling this year outside of the Chattanooga game. 211 yards or less in the last four for Tennessee, less than 200 in the last 3 games with only 2 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. And we also thought he could utilize his legs, Nicky Treats. 32 total rushing yards in both SEC games so far for the Volunteers. I will say this, though. This line did open up closer to that 14 that you mentioned. It is now 16.5, and albeit an outright upset at Arkansas a week ago, Tennessee still covered in its first 4 games of this season by an average cover margin entering last week of more than 21 points per game. And Lisa, you made this point last week. We got a little contested here on the desk. Florida much better at home under Billy Napier than away from Gainesville. 3-7 straight up, albeit 6-4 against the spread. Already the 4th game for UF this year, booked as the underdog. Elsewhere on this desk a week ago, our only top 25 tilt on the weekend was Missouri and A&M. Number 9 Missouri, unbeaten at the time, a perfect 4-0 going to College Station. A&M was a slight home favorite. Connor Wigman made his return, and boy, did the Aggies' offense look sensational. And, Kev, there were questions around Missouri's 4-0 start, around what Mizzou had done defensively against Power 4 competition. We saw that on full display last week. Mizzou gave up 41 points, more than 500 total yards to Texas A&M. Not a Power 4 foe this weekend. They head to Amherst to take on UMass. They're a 4-touchdown favorite. How does Missouri show its resolve?
Yeah, I think with the defense, if you look, the first 2 games of the season, they won, they covered via the shutout. This team is 4-1 to the under in their last 2 seasons combined against non-power teams. They don't really usually hang huge numbers on these teams. You might say, oh, come on, they scored 51 on Murray State. They were a 50.5-point favorite. Like, that was as much as you could have possibly expected out of that team. Like, they hardly, I don't even know if they did creep over their team total by scoring 51 in a game. This was truly 10 points higher than I was expecting when I saw this total here. UMass, if they score 14, I think they should storm the field. I look for a dead under here in Mizzou, UMass.
You might get the under. I could only look Missouri, and this is a get-right spot. Again, for that pitiful performance on the road, you put up 10 points, 3 came right in the final, closing seconds of that matchup. I will say this, UMass 1-5 overall. The strength of the team is the secondary, giving up 164 passing yards per game, holding opposing quarterbacks 54% completion percentage, have forced interceptions in regards to the back end. That could be maybe allow them to keep it in it from a first half. But Missouri should win this game by 40 if they're dedicated and focused.
The Tigers from Columbia, 0-3 against the number, against Power 4 foes so far this season. 2-0 against the spread, as Kev mentioned, against those non-Power 4 teams, including the FBS opponent in Buffalo. They have blanked both of the teams in the Bulls and Murray State. I agree with you. I'm on the under today in Amherst. Now we talk some teams that struggled early, but looking pretty good since. Next.
we're at a point in time coming off of a wild Saturday of college football. People are consistently peeking over at this board.
He actually would not be my number one overall pick, nor would I bet him to be the number one overall pick. I think you got that next wave of NFL players, which is so enticing, which when you see Jaden Daniels come into the NFL and you go, I can get something like that with a guy with just as good an arm.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoff.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was thinking! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
I do sliding DiVincenzo to the one. Obviously, Terrence Cheney Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant with that amount of money.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I think the Washington Commanders are one of the best bets to win it all, or at the very least win the NFC.
Their offensive line, I do want to say one thing. It's very average. The coaching is good. They're getting good coaching from Bobby Johnson, their line coach. Here from the Giants, but they've kind of overachieved. Let's call it like it is. Daniels has taken them up. Look, that division's not very good, and they could very well win it over the Eagles, and the Cowboys. They're not a Super Bowl team.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
We start by going to South Bend as we welcome you back to this Saturday Live right here on SportsGrid. It's week 7 of the college football season on College Football Today. And we discussed two teams, one in Notre Dame, the next in Clemson, that maybe struggled in spots early on this season, but have looked pretty good since. We go to 11th ranked Notre Dame. A 22.5-point home favorite today in South Bend against Stanford. And Kev, we start with you. 45.5 is the total for this matchup. Notre Dame's only blemish this year is playing the MAC. They are 1-1 straight up and 0-2 against the spread. They're 3-0 ATS in their 3 games against non-MAC opponents. Does that continue today against the Cardinal?
Leave me alone, man. Leave me alone. You know what's kind of driving me nuts is if they didn't lose to Northern Illinois, they'd be ranked 3rd
No doubt.
in the country. 3rd is where they were 5th going into the game against Northern Illinois. They're ranked 11th. We'll see how it plays out. It's a really good spot for Notre Dame. Freeman is 2-0 against the number off of a bye with an 8-point win and a neutral against BYU. And then last year they obliterated, I think it was Pitt, 58-7. I look at Stanford so far. Secondary is tragic. They've allowed at least 200 passing yards to every opposing quarterback, as well as 2 passing touchdowns. That's where I went. Give me Riley Leonard-Lisi for 2+ passing touchdowns, plus 165 through 2 against Louisville, and all 3 of his passing touchdowns in come of his last 2 games. Riley Leonard's starting to come on for Notre Dame.
He's going to need to come on today because to your point about the weakness of the Stanford defense, 270 allowed in regards to the back end. They've allowed 11 touchdowns to opposing quarterbacks and 71% completion percentage. So Riley Leonard should have a big game in regards to the offensive philosophy. I flip-flopped in regards to I could see Notre Dame covering this line. It wouldn't shock me if Stanford covered it in regards to a backdoor. I think there's no doubt Notre Dame wins. They've won 4 of the last 5 in the series. Last time they played, though, Stanford gets the 16-14 win in South Bend. Here's the other factor as well, and I'm going contrarian. Notre Dame's defense, lights out, secondary. They've only given up, guys, 805 passing yards per game. They're holding opposing quarterbacks 47% completion percentage. We know Ashton Daniels is banged up. Justin Lamson came in 54% last week against Virginia Tech. I'm going to take a shot that it's a big breakout game for Riley Leonard. You have to get him involved in regards to the passing attack. If you have big picture, big hopes and goals, this is the defense to do it. I lean to Notre Dame, but I'm taking the over 45.5.
So that's an interesting component for me. This almost feels like one of those sleepy home spots under Marcus Freeman where the Irish have not been great. 6-7-2 against the spread at home with Marcus Freeman as the head coach. And Riley Leonard in all 5 games for the Fighting Irish this year, 163 passing yards. That's it. Or less. Only 3 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Now, he has been sensational. He's scored in 4 straight. He's got 7 rushing touchdowns this year. He has rushed for 52 yards in all 4 wins for Notre Dame this season. But Stanford is atrocious defending the pass. They were the worst Power 4 passing defense in the country last year. They're the second worst in the ACC, giving up more than 270 this year. They're decent defending the run, 11th best in the country, allowing less than 88 yards per game. We shall see. Now, the last few years, when Clemson and Wake Forest have squared off, the games have been decided by only a single score, even last year. Not expected to be the case, Lisi Guide, today in Winston-Salem. The Tigers, after the opening season loss to Georgia, have won 4 straight, all 4 victories by at least 16 points, 28 points per game, the average victory margin for Clemson this year. They're laying 3 touchdowns today against the Demon Deacs. How do you see it playing out?
Well, they have dominated Wake Forest. They've won 15 straight, Ben, in regards to the series. To your point, last 2 decided by 11 points, last 4 decided by 14 points per game. This is a Cape Klubnik game because you look at the defense for Wake Forest, they're giving up 291 passing yards per game in the win against NC State. They allowed that offense to throw for 314. Can only look Clemson. I like the over, though, Kev. 60.5. Last year's game, 17-12. Give me over 60.5. I lean to Clemson in the matchup.
I only chuckle because when you say it's a Kate Klugman game and a Phil Maffa game, it's an everybody game. The Wake defense is atrocious. For me, here is the main thing I am looking for. This is the game to finally figure out how we bet Phil Maffa throughout this season. Against FSU, 25 carries. We know it's his backfield. But does Phil Maffa get big workloads when they win big or when they beat up on teams? So far, no. He gets 20-plus carries, and it's Phil Maffa season the rest of the way.
It's a huge Clemson offensive day, at least on paper. We go super fast up next.
We're at a point in time coming off of a wild Saturday of college football. People are consistently peeking over at this board. He actually would not be my number 1 overall pick, nor would I bet him to be the number 1 overall pick. I think you got that next wave of NFL players, which is so enticing, which when you see Jaden Daniels come into the NFL and you go, I can get something like that with a guy with just as good an arm.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
It's a new era in CFP to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoff.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was clicking! But he had that program was only going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
If you're sliding DiVincenzo to the one, obviously Terrence Jennings Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant with that amount of money.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I think the Washington Commanders are one of the best bets to win it all, or at the very least win the NFC.
Their offensive line, I do want to say one thing. It's very average. The coaching is good. They're getting good coaching from Bobby Johnson, their line coach. Here from the Giants, but they've kind of overachieved. Let's call it like it is. Daniels has taken them up. Look, that division's not very good, and they could very well win it over the Eagles, and the Cowboys. they're not a Super Bowl team.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to college football today, live right here on Saturday, October 12th. It's a great Saturday of college football, and there are so many games outside of the ranked versus ranked top 25 tilts that, Kev, it necessitates we move with pace.
Tempo?
Tempo.
He wasn't even looking, and you say tempo perks. He's
right.
ready to go.
He's right. Check Lisi.
There is one game in here that I do like. Tempo.
Whoa, RPO. Let's find it. Now you have my interest. And I almost want to go through these games faster than ever. Cal Pitt. Tempo?
No tempo.
Oh.
No tempo. But they have one of the best quarterbacks in regards to the ACC, Eli Holstein. Nobody's talking about Pitt. Could be 6-0 for the first time, I believe, since 1932, number one. But Holstein, to me, is the difference. 15 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. This line opened up at 2.5, up to 3.5. What's the emotional mindset, guys, of Cal losing that game to Miami, coupled with the fact that we keep talking about this, 5-14 straight up on the road or on a neutral field the last 3 years under Justin Wilcox, plus a little chill in the air today? Give me Pitt to roll.
Cal did cover last week against Miami, of course, 29-18-1 against the spread as an underdog with Justin Wilcox since 2018. Best among Power 4 teams, booked as an underdog at least 30 times. But Pitt is one of 12 remaining undefeated teams in the country, one of those 3 remaining undefeated that is also perfect against the number. 5-0 ATS alongside BYU and Army. 6th best scoring offense in the country. Young OC under Pat Narduzzi, Cade Bell has been lighting it up, averaging more than 45.5 points per game. And Lisi guy, Eli Holstein, has been incredible. 301 yards at least and 3 passing touchdowns in each of the 4 games for the Panthers against FBS competition. He is the first Pitt quarterback since Dan Marino in 1979 to win all 5 of his first career starts with Pittsburgh. I think they keep it rolling. I do think the game is decided, though, Kev, by single digits.
I got to be honest with you. I immediately was trying to make the comparison to a Pitt legend, and I couldn't remember who the famous
Joe Flacco
quarterback was.
LaShawn
so it was
McCoy.
That's Delaware.
LaShawn
Come
No,
on.
he
McCoy.
started at Pitt, though. People
Oh, did it? People do forget that there.
Sean McCoy.
Shout out Shady. You know
you
where
go.
Brian Westbrook went?
Villanova.
Oh, wow. Look at you.
Eagles guy, Joe
Did
Lisi.
you, no. He's
Clemson.
out
I
on
know,
the
I know.
Eagles. No.
Clemson.
He's out. Ben, he's out on the Eagles this year. He's out on the Eagles
We're
this
back
year.
in. I got
We
to
need-
win. We go fast. We're going fast.
Oh, yeah. Check. Illinois, Purdue, tempo?
No, Purdue's won 4 yet. Purdue's won
It's the
4.
tempo.
Purdue's
I know where
won
it's
4
coming.
straight. Purdue's won 4 straight in the series. They won this game 44-19. Hudson Card chopped out. Ryan Brown.
He's injured.
Yeah, but he's out. Scrape him up, out. Ryan Brown's in. I think that could be a benefit to this offense.
Wow.
Hudson Card does not look good. 4 interceptions on the year. Illinois wins. This line opened up at 18.5. It's now through a key number, 21. It's up to 22 and a hook. Give me Walters. Give me Purdue on the road. I think they potentially can make it in a 4-quarter game.
I worry about Purdue offensively. It has been a struggle, even with Hudson Card. I don't know how they add it up. Here we go. I can see you out of my periphery. Thank you very much. Second worst total offense in the Big Ten. But even outside of that, here's why I think Illinois is in command of this football game. Purdue is the worst total and rushing defense in the Big Ten. Worst scoring defense, allowing nearly 37 points per game. That was Ryan Walters' calling card when he was the DC with the Illini under Brett Bielema 2 years ago, and they were the best scoring defense in all of college football. Here's a fun fact for you, though. As an underdog under Brett Bielema, Illinois has been incredible. 15-8 against the spread. As a favorite, just 7-10-2 ATS. Purdue an underdog, though, against all 4 FBS foes. They haven't covered and have not covered by an average margin of nearly 4 touchdowns per game. Here's the tempo. You ready?
You think so?
Washington and
Wow.
No tempo. I will say
A
this.
lot of people like Iowa to bounce back from last week against the Buckeyes.
Will Rogers made me a believer. I was dead wrong in terms of Michigan, but he is completing 73% of his passes, 12 touchdowns, 1 interception. The kid lit it up against a very good, I believe, Michigan defense for the most part. Here's the other thing, too. 110 passing yards by Caden McNamara last week. Iowa still, with Tim Lester, only has 1 passing touchdown against FBS opponents. I can't back Iowa in any capacity, even though they're at home, Kev. Give me Washington.
Zag on you. Last week you said Will Rogers was a money burner and a human turnover machine. And now you're sold on him. I think you got to look.
Interception.
Gotta look.
Playing well.
Got to look Hawkeyes. He throws multiple picks today there. That's a full Zag on you.
Can I just ask you some trivia fun facts?
Sure.
Cade McNamara's last passing touchdown against a Power 4 team is who and when?
He had to be wearing a Michigan uniform.
He was wearing a Michigan uniform.
Illinois.
It was against Iowa, the team he plays for, in the 2021 Big Ten title game. Caleb Johnson, though, has been incredibly impressive. Second leading rusher in the country. Still 15 carries for 86 yards and a score last week against a really stout Ohio State front. Washington, one of 6 FBS programs that ranks top 10 in scoring defense and total defense as well. Still think it's a big day for Johnson on the ground against the Huskies.
I'm taking a chance here because these are in order, but I think I know the game.
Okay.
It's got to be Kentucky Vanderbilt tempo.
It's possible.
Yeah, it is. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Come on.
Tell us why.
Is that what we're doing?
Go.
Yeah. Last 4 meetings in the
He
series,
loves the game.
58.8 points per game. And I just feel like there's some kryptonite lurking out there. So that's good. Everybody looking for an emotional letdown with Diego Pavia and Kentucky, a methodical offense. They grind out wins. Yeah. But to me, this game has party over 50-plus points. Now, you and I lost this game because of gutless Will Levis.
And because you blamed me.
And I did. But now I love it.
No, and I love you, too. I can't get involved.
Now, and we're going to be hanging out.
Yeah.
So we should be betting this tonight.
Oh, wow. We will be together during this.
Turn it around.
I am not betting this
Party
total with you.
over.
I am not betting this total.
Huge over.
No
Huge over.
way.
Vandy.
58.8 points combined. Average.
I like Vandy.
Me as well. Okay, so Vanderbilt this year, 3-0 against the spread as an underdog, 2 outright wins, including against Virginia Tech to open up the season, and, of course, last week against Alabama. Diego Pavia, against Power 4 competition this year, 17 carries at least 56 on the ground, and his low was last week against the Crimson Tide. Of course, Kentucky is a top 10 rushing defense, 6th best in the country, 78 yards per game allowed. But the reason we might see some tempo today, Vanderbilt, one of 4 programs nationally, over in every game this year, over in all 5 for the Doors by nearly 2 touchdowns on average. Now take us to the ACC.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not. I'm too tempted.
AAC?
Army UAB.
Yeah.
This, I don't know how this screams Lisi. Noon kick. Give it to the bagel man. What's the best bet?
361 rushing yards for Army heading into this matchup. UAB's atrocious. Trent Dilfer is basically being run out of town in regards to that program. I'll say this. Close your eyes. I'm taking UAB plus the points.
Oh, the bagel man.
Wow. The bagel best bet with a cup of Joe.
Oh, we didn't even see the bagel man today. I
skipped out of
town.
The mojo.
The bagel guy and went to a different location.
Could you imagine if you gave him a 12 o'clock?
You told him UAB getting 4 touchdowns. Listen, Army, one of those teams, undefeated, 5-0, both straight up, and against the spread, 4 of 5. As a true favorite, they have gone over in all 4. Now, I wanted to bet Army's quarterback Bryson Daly, who has at least 117 rushing yards in all 4 games against FBS competition. The prop is 121.5. Now with the bagel man involved, I might have to get in on this game at noon Eastern. Mitchie Stadium going to look beautiful on this fall Saturday. Go Virginia, Louisville quick.
Quickly, Virginia, Louisville here, Lisi. Louisville getting knocked around by SMU. Bounce back?
Yeah. They've won 2 straight in the series, and I think Tyler Shuck, that offense bounced back. Tony Ellitt's done a fantastic job. 4-1 overall, but I think Louisville, too much speed.
Virginia, 4-1 this year, 3-1 against the number. Plenty more on college football today next.
we're at a point in time coming off of a wild Saturday of college football. People are consistently peeking over at this board.
He actually would not be my number one overall pick, nor would I bet him to be the number one overall pick. I think you got that next wave of NFL players, which is so enticing, which when you see Jaden Daniels come into the NFL and you go, I can get something like that with a guy with just as good an arm.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoff.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was thinking! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
If you're sliding DiVincenzo to the one, obviously Terrence Channing Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant with that amount of money.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I think the Washington Commanders are one of the best bets to win it all, or at the very least win the NFC.
Their offensive line, I do want to say one thing. It's very average. The coaching is good. They're getting good coaching from Bobby Johnson, their line coach. Here from the Giants, but they've kind of overachieved. Let's call it like it is. Daniels has taken them up. Look, that division's not very good, and they could very well win it over the Eagles, and the Cowboys. They're not a Super Bowl team.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
It's a significant Saturday here on October 12th in the 2024 college football season. Joe Lisi, Ben Stevens, and for a huge Saturday, we need that coaching analysis and insight. So we turn to Coach Terry Bowden. Joining us here on College Football Today, Coach Bowden, as always, we appreciate the time. 3 ranked versus ranked, top 25 tilts. Other games this weekend that will impact races for a conference crown. And everybody now and I here midway through October on the college football playoff. We really appreciate the time and insight. How juiced up are you?
I can't wait. You know, we thought our top teams would easily beat the unranked team. That didn't work. Now we're going to see top team versus top team, and this is what we've all been waiting for.
Yeah, Coach, it's really one of the beauties of college football. On quiet weekends, chaos ensues, and it sets the stage for the marquee matchups that we have, including tonight in Eugene. It's 2 versus 3 inside Autzen Stadium. 3rd-ranked Oregon playing host to number 2 Ohio State. And the Ducks, Coach, getting a field goal at home as the underdog. Have you ever seen anything like that inside Autzen Stadium?
Well, you know what? I don't think I've ever seen any teams get into Autzen Stadium like the Ohio State team we have today. They are loaded. They've checked every box, and they may be number 2 ranked, but they're number 1 in the amount of talent they got on their field.
Coach, in regards to road environments, this is a true road environment for Ohio State. Will Howard with Ohio State hasn't played in a road game in regards to this matchup. What do you do to get a quarterback prepared? Even though he's a veteran, is there anything special Ryan Day and, more importantly, Chip Kelly can do to get the offense prepared for that environment in Eugene tonight?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything different for the quarterback in these games than it is the rest of the team. But there are things you got to do. You got to practice at least once at the time when the game's being played. And this being an early game out west, it's pretty normal on the east side or the Midwest to understand the time frame. But you've also got to get them prepared, again, for being in that place against a great football team. And also the crowd noise. You know, I've podcasted Autzen Stadium. It's not a big stadium compared to Ohio State, but it's very close to the field. It's right on top of you. It's a raucous place to play. They'll be wild out there. So now Ohio State is used to a loud stadium, but it's something different, I think, in Austin Field.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure on both head coaches. Ryan Day, 61-8 straight up, and now his full 6 seasons as Ohio State's head coach. All 8 losses, though, against a ranked opponent. A big one tonight, 3-point spread in favor of Ohio State. Coach Bowden, our next top 15 tilt on this Saturday, also in prime time. Under the lights, a night game inside Death Valley to Tiger Stadium we go. It's 13th ranked LSU, a 3.5-point home underdog against 9th-ranked Ole Miss. Coach, as we know, Tiger Stadium at night, one of the best venues in college football. From that coaching perspective, like Joe asked about Autzen, how do you prepare for this atmosphere that's one of a kind?
It is one of a kind. I've coached in that stadium about 7 times, and it is different than every other environment, I think. It's not just the night games. It's not just over 100,000. But it's those Cajuns, and they're crazy. They have a great time getting ready for the game. 8 hours they get ready for the game, and I have lost games in that stadium just because of crowd noise and how it affects your ability. This is the 100th anniversary of that stadium. They're celebrating 100 years in Death Valley, and they've added strobe lights, they've added jumbotrons. It's going to be like Super Bowl halftime in that game, and so that's why I give the LSU the edge in this game. I think they'll cover the spread, and they'll win this game.
Coach, I want to talk about the front 7 of Ole Miss. They're only giving up 62 rushing yards per game. It's been very difficult for opposing offenses to run on them. If you're Brian Kelly, do you want to establish the run early on to see if that offensive line could get a push and then work off of play action? How would you attack that Ole Miss defense tonight?
Well, you're right. I think you've got to run the football, but you've got to mix it in with the passing. Both of these teams are too talented on defense just to go in there and say, I'm going to run or I'm going to pass. You do have to take what they give you, but be mixing it up. The first down run, second down pass, first down pass, second down run. You've got to mix it up so they can't lock in on you and get you into third and long situations. Both defenses, very solid. Even LSU has not played as well consistently. They've got an outstanding rush defense, and they can rush the passer, which they need to. But Ole Miss, great talent.
Yeah, the Running Rebs' third best scoring defense in the country. A tough test with both Garrett Nussmeier and Caden Durham, the true freshman running back, kind of taking the lead for the Bayou Bengals. Let's get to the Red River rivalry, Coach, inside the Cotton Bowl today at the Texas State Fair. Often very close between these two teams, not as the odds makers expect on this Saturday. 14.5-point spread in favor of Texas against Oklahoma. Coach Bowden, how does the rivalry, the familiarity between these two programs affect your breakdown of this matchup?
Well, if the fans could play, it'd be wild. I mean, the fans have been part of this rivalry forever. And with so many portal transfers, I don't know if the players really understand how big this game is. Goes back to the Southwest Conference. It's huge in every fan's mind, but it's one of those games that Texas right now, they've got the talent advantage. Over the years, most of the time, I would say Oklahoma with the talent advantage. This is on Texas, but it's really a game of Texas, the offense of Oklahoma versus the Texas defense, because they've struggled on offense in Oklahoma. They've got a very good defense at Texas, but Texas has a great offense too. Who's going to start at quarterback? I think it's going to be Quinn Ewers. I'm not sure that matters in regard to who's going to win.
Coach, let's talk about Quinn Ewers. It's been about 4 or 5 weeks since he last played. Any potential rust in regards to the quarterback-wide receiver relationship? And a bigger question is, if they're struggling in the fourth quarter and Ewers is still in there, any shot that Sark moves on to Arch Manning to potentially pull out the win?
I just go back to last night's Utah game where they played their Cam Rising. He wasn't ready, or he got his ankle turned, or his thumb wasn't, his finger wasn't ready, and it hurt them. He couldn't play very well. I think the same thing. Ewers, he's ready to go. They're probably going to play him, but if he does not play or is still banged up, it's going to Archie Manning real quick, and they're still in pretty good hands.
We have not seen Quinn Ewers since September 14th in the opening half over a month ago against UTSA. Coach Terry Bowden, as always, we appreciate the time. Enjoy this Week 7 College Football Saturday slate. We try to find some answers in the end zone. Up next on College Football Today.
we're at a point in time coming off of a wild Saturday of college football. People are consistently peeking over at this board.
He actually would not be my number one overall pick, nor would I bet him to be the number one overall pick. I think you got that next wave of NFL players, which is so enticing, which when you see Jaden Daniels come into the NFL and you go, I can get something like that with a guy with just as good an arm.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
It's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoff.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was thinking! But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
I do sliding DiVincenzo to the one. Obviously, Terrence Jennings Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant with that amount of money.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I think the Washington Commanders are one of the best bets to win it all, or at the very least win the NFC.
Their offensive line, I do want to say one thing. It's very average. The coaching is good. They're getting good coaching from Bobby Johnson, their line coach. Here from the Giants, but they've kind of overachieved. Let's call it like it is. Daniels has taken them up. Look, that division's not very good, and they could very well win it over the Eagles, and the Cowboys. They're not a Super Bowl team.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
We round out this second hour live right here on this Saturday on College Football Today. We do so by finding you some picks for this Week 7 slate.
What was the good one I came up with last week? I don't remember it anymore.
End zone edges?
No, executive, I don't know.
Come on.
You already had Bagel Best Bet. We don't need any
He's got
creativity.
all these catchphrases.
You're running up the
just go to
score.
the pay dirt pick.
He's throwing his fingers now.
cares?
Take it in.
All right, big game here. Let's go right to Ole Miss and LSU. Ole Miss and LSU.
Go ahead. What do you like? What do you like touchdown-wise? What do you have up in front of you?
I know what I like for LSU.
Go ahead.
How about Caden Durham and Kyron Lacey in regards to the LSU offense?
Oh, goodness.
I would even take a shot on Nussmeier to score tonight. Got great value in regards to that. If I'm looking Ole Miss, Jackson Dart has to be the guy, but not one. I would take two through the air on the ground. I think he can get two on the ground today, possibly.
I am all Kyron Lacey. I'm going to be looking for him also a little bit later on. This season, he has 25 catches on 45 targets. At some point, he and Nussmeier have to get on the same page where one of these double-digit target games turns into a 7-8 reception game here, and he breaks through numbers, including finding the end zone.
It is really interesting. 5 total touchdowns for Jackson Dart in this matchup last year in Oxford, including on the ground. And Trey Harris is the leading wide receiver in college football, 885 yards. He has had at least 81 yards in every game. He's the only wideout in CFB with more than 720 receiving yards, and albeit scoring 5 touchdowns this year, but just in half of the 6 games for the Runnin' Rebs. The reason I laughed so hard as he welcomed in Pay Dirt Picks was because the first game that we were going to start with is 2 versus 3, Ohio State and Oregon. But hey, that mind is working, and we allow it to do so. Lisi Guy, you are on the Ducks. You mentioned the ground game. Attacking Ohio State has to be a big one then for Oregon's lead back in Jordan James. Will he find Pater?
Yes, I was on him in regards to the game against Michigan State. I think in order for Oregon to win this game, he's got to have multiple touches in regards to the rushing attack. Love him through his number. Love him to score a touchdown today. And if we're looking defensive touchdowns in regards to the big games, I honestly believe Oregon has the best opportunity. Defensive-minded coach in regards to Dan Lanning, the first true road game for Will Howard in that offense. Scoop and score, pick six, I think is on the table, Kev, for Oregon's defense tonight.
I'm very interested. Look, I kind of proved my point, I feel, with the Emeka Egbuka game last week. The targets, the 3 touchdowns. Jeremiah Smith, though, I think is Will Howard's panic button. Like, I think the offense schemes up the easiest looks for Emeka Egbuka, but I think anytime Will Howard's like, tight, red zone, everything then just seems to shift towards Jeremiah Smith. I think his touchdown number, a guy who scored in every game, presents some value.
He has 6 touchdowns this year. He's got 453 receiving yards. Both lead Ohio State. Emeka Egbuka, more receptions with 30. Had 9 last week and 71 yards and 3 touchdowns against Iowa. In terms of trying to figure out the backfield for the Buckeyes, it's probably worth a look at both 50 yards on the ground in both Big Ten matchups. Quinshon Judkins, the leading rusher, he's got 5 touchdowns. Travion Henderson has 4. So as we keep it rolling here around Pay Dirt Picks, next up, we've got Penn State and USC. Lisi guy, maybe some points in this matchup. Who finds the end zone?
Well, I think it's got to be Woody Marks in regards to USC, in regards to this matchup. Again, I think the rushing attack needs to be prevalent, not just for Penn State, but for USC in regards to this ball game. And again, if we're looking Penn State overall, I mean, you got to get the football to Katron Allen. You got to find ways to feed him, and not just in regards to the rushing attack, but in regards to the receiving game as well. We saw him receive one against West Virginia week number 1. Look out for Katron Allen.
I like Singleton. I think he should be, again, a heavier. I still think he is. Again, they're very close, but I still think they defer to Singleton in the scoring distance.
8 rushing scores allowed by USC on the ground in 3 Big Ten games. Now it's time to find a lot of plus money.
Go for the loot, just like you asked for. Last week I went back to a money line dog, and it was Florida State. I'm officially banned off that. 2+ touchdowns, Travis Hunter. Cannot wait to break down that Colorado-Kansas State game in a bit.
Well, I'm taking Florida in regards to going for the loot. I think they're live today, plus 490. They're playing with house money. The series suggests they should be in this game, and I like the quarterback Graham Mertz's experience over the freshman Nico.
Big one in the American. Can USF at home pull off an upset? They've got 4 outright wins under Alex Golish. They're an 8.5-point underdog against Memphis. 3's up for our third and final hour on CFT next.
We're at a point in time coming off of a wild Saturday of college football. People are consistently peeking over at this board.
He actually would not be my number 1 overall pick, nor would I bet him to be the number 1 overall pick. I think you got that next wave of NFL players, which is so enticing, which when you see Jaden Daniels come into the NFL and you go, I can get something like that with a guy with just as good an arm.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
It's a new era in CFP to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoff.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards. That was thinking, but he had that program was already going there.
Only on SportsGrid.
I do a sliding DiVincenzo to the 1. Obviously, Terrence Cheney Jr., that is actually dynamic offensively and defensively. So we'll see how it works. I think it's a little bit of a work in progress. Do both teams win? Yes. I don't think at the end of the day, Minnesota could have afforded to keep Cat, Rudy, and Ant for that amount of money.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
I think the Washington Commanders are one of the best bets to win it all, or at the very least win the NFC.
Their offensive line, I do want to say one thing. It's very average. The coaching is good. They're getting good coaching from Bobby Johnson, their line coach. Here from the Giants, but they've kind of overachieved. Let's call it like it is. Daniels has taken them up. Look, that division is not very good, and they could very well win it over the Eagles, and the Cowboys. They're not a Super Bowl team.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.